this thing working? Give me some sound over here.
Yeah.
The Out of Bounds Show is powered by the award-winning golf courses at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
And good morning. Welcome in. The Out of Bounds Show. 105.9 The Zone ESPN. Brought to you by the Golden Moon Casino Sportsbook and Lounge and award-winning DancingRabbitGolf.com. You can watch the show right now on YouTube. Search Out of Bounds Sports. Mississippi State has won 5 in a row. They are now firmly on the bubble. They're knocking on the door. And Joe Lunardi is starting to recognize them after a Q1 road win over Arkansas on Saturday night. And our next guest, Dane Bradshaw, called the game. Former Tennessee Vol basketball player, now with ESPN, SEC Network, and he joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Dane, did you think that Chris Jans and this team could do this 4 or 5 weeks ago when they were going through that brutal losing streak?
I was optimistic because I knew how well coached they were, prepared. They've been extremely competitive, and it was just, I mean, you guys see it on the regular where, you know, you got an 0 for 18 game from 3. I think they had a 7 for 22 from the free throw line. It was just always like, hey, we don't need them to turn into the greatest shooters of all time. Just don't be so bad. Just be even mediocre would get them some wins. And their defense has been a constant. And, you know, teams like this, you just kind of need something good to happen for you. And that Big 12 challenge was a huge reward for their resiliency and got them some confidence. Shaquille Moore has really given them a big boost to give them some consistency as a scorer and not to put so much pressure on Tolu Smith to be night in, night out a top scorer. And so they've been able to overcome when teams double team or have the center of attention on Tolu Smith, to where other guys, are capable and competent enough to pick up the scoring slack. And so credit to them for hanging in there, and certainly the biggest win of the Chris Jans short era there on the road in Fayetteville.
No doubt. Dane Bradshaw called the game Saturday night. It's a Q1 win, and now they're firmly on the bubble, and they host a Kentucky team that's trying to figure out who they are, and their back is against the wall. Dane, are you confident? Well, how confident are you that they can win enough down the stretch, maybe one in Nashville, and punch their ticket? Mississippi State, that is.
Yeah, I mean, I think look, these bubble teams are on the bubble for a reason. And I'll just tell that to Mississippi State fans, when you see your team lose a game, don't think, oh, we're doomed now. That's what bubble teams do. They're a little bit inconsistent, and they'll probably split. But I think at the end of the day, for them, you look at their remaining schedule, and there's a few opportunities there to really boost that resume and try to get safely in. But there's also a couple of those can't lose ones as well. Like you just, and it's tough because Ole Miss is going to be excited to play you. They haven't had much before, but you got to go at Ole Miss, and that's one where all of a sudden the Rebels, who are reeling and probably discouraged, where rivalry game they get up for. And then, of course, the South Carolina game. So those are a couple you just flat out have to win, because they do way more to hurt you than they do to help you. And to me, if you can win those two, then at that point, get a couple more. When you got Kentucky at Missouri, A&M, and then at Vanderbilt, you don't even have to win the bulk of them. Just one or two, I think, would keep you in that bubble conversation where you enter the SEC tournament clearly with an opportunity to solidify your spot.
SEC insider Dane Bradshaw on the Out of Bounds Show and the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Dane, you mentioned on Saturday night how frustrated Arkansas was on offense, and kind of alluded to the fact that, you know, Mississippi State, what they do on defense also generates offense. Walk us through what Jans and them are doing on the defensive side of the football to frustrate teams like Arkansas.
Yeah. Well, Arkansas came in with the game plan of we're not going to settle from three. And Arkansas historically does a really good job of getting the majority of their points inside the paint at the free throw line and not living and dying by the three. But Mississippi State packs it in so much, and they really dare you to take those shots. And I sort of joked with Eric Musselman, the Arkansas head coach, before the game. I said, all right, what are you going to tell your team if all of a sudden 10 out of your first 20 field goal attempts are from three, which is not what they want? And he laughed because there's no way. We can't let that happen. It won't. But that was about what happened. Mm-hmm. And it's because of the way Mississippi State plays. And this is not necessarily the style that Chris Jans has always had throughout his career. But in this league and with this personnel, it's the best chance he has to win because the SEC does not shoot the ball very well at all. Now, could they struggle some against a team like Missouri that is a really good three-point shooting team? Yeah, they could. Might have to adjust some things there. But with this opportunity against Kentucky, Kentucky's okay from three, but they're not really complicated offensively. And I think Mississippi State's going to match up well with Kentucky and make this a really, really ugly game. And would not be surprised at all, especially getting the hump, rocking again to they smell blood with the Kentucky Wildcats and an opportunity.
What Dane Bradshaw on the Out of Bounds show, what do you see from what's wrong with Kentucky? I thought several weeks ago, Dane, they had it figured out for a minute. I've always thought that Calipari suffocates his players on offense, but you see way more than we do. What's wrong with Kentucky, and why are they so inconsistent?
Yeah, just a lot of things. I'm with you. I really thought they started to have it figured out when the freshman point guard Casey Wallace really became the primary ball handler, and they started bringing Wheeler off the bench. Now you got to deal with some locker room and ego stuff with that change, but it felt like they were starting to get an identity. But I'm at a loss for why this Kentucky team is so bad defensively. The amount of breakdowns they have, they can't guard ball screens. Everybody's putting Oscar Sheboy in a ball screen, and they can't guard it off the ball either. Like if you're setting staggered screens away from the ball and all this stuff, you got to run a lot of that action because Kentucky will break down. And the same way you can lose confidence on the offensive end, you can lose it defensively too. And the number of times in a game where they're looking at each other and kind of pointing fingers saying, I thought you had him. I thought you called the switch. And then next thing you know, you're taking the ball out of the net. You're still frustrated. And now your offense is lethargic too. And so they've got that going. They do have a couple injuries. So if it's not one thing, it's the other. As soon as they plug in a hole, another one opens up. And really they're not going to out-talent people. And so if you're not going to out-talent people, then you got to outwork them and outsmart them. And they just hadn't been able to do that consistently. And really a shock. I had this team on their foreign tour when they had in the Bahamas, and they looked the part of a Final Four type team. But they get no rim protection, which is something was a point of emphasis for Calipari in the off season. But they really don't even play their best shot blockers. Because of the liability they can be on the offensive end.
What Dane Bradshaw on the Out of Bounds show, SEC Network, ESPN, talking SEC hoops as Mississippi State's trying to find their way in to the big dance and March Madness. The Dogs host Big Blue Nation Wednesday at 7:30 Central. Dane, how does Mississippi State match up with Kentucky?
I think well, because of the fact that C.J. Frederick, that's a name to remember for that plays for Kentucky. He's a shooter. He was out with a hurt, bruised rib. I don't know if it's a break or what, but he did not play in the last game. And he's somebody that really spreads the court for them that you have to respect from the perimeter. But if he's not playing, they've really only got a couple guys that can hurt you from deep. And I like the fact that Mississippi State does such a good job of knowing the other team's personnel, and again, how to make the game ugly and make them beat you from the outside. And now, in years past, there have been some Kentucky teams that just flat out didn't have any shooters. It's not like they're incapable. They've got some shooters. But I like this matchup for Mississippi State for a lot of the same reasons that you've seen Kentucky be upset before. and they're lacking confidence right now. Will Xavier Wheeler, who did not play last game, he gives them a different dimension and pace, even though he's not having the season he wanted as an experienced point guard. But he was out with the ankle injury, so the depth chart is something to watch for sure in this one.
Do you think Cal could get frustrated and look to, move? Look, you know this. They're the blue blood. Kansas, Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, and you have everything you need. Do you think that Cal could get frustrated and also maybe see the writing on the wall and look to move, or is your thought process, heck no, you can't leave Lexington and Kentucky?
Right. No, I don't see. I think number one, I think he's too proud, and that's not an insult. I don't think he's going to let anybody run him out, or fans being frustrated and being like, you know what, forget it. He's going to, even if they don't make the tournament this year, he's going to be ready to lace them up and bring in this number one recruiting class he has and go on a redemption tour next year. And Kentucky fans are tired of hearing about next year's recruiting class. They've heard it year after year. So there's fatigue there, and there's tension between coach and fan base, both of which are mad really for the same reasons. They all want to win more. But so no, I, even though there could be there would be a lot of angst if they don't make the tournament this year. Even if they did make the tournament, if they don't get to the Sweet 16 or beyond, I think Kentucky fans are still going to say, hey, we're trending in the wrong direction. But I'd be really surprised if he is not back at Kentucky next year, welcoming in that top recruiting class, and then we'll revisit after that outcome.
Do you think a Bruce Pearl would strongly consider a move to Texas, or no?
Earlier in his career, yes. I don't right now. I think he's made a home at Auburn. I don't think he wants to rebuild. He's gone to a Final Four at Auburn. And to me, and last year he was able to kind of use that leverage, if you will. If you recall, the Louisville job opened up in the middle of the season when Auburn was number one in the country. Couldn't happen at a better time, and his name got in the mix. And so they wrapped up some significant things with his contract.
Oh, that's right, $54 million. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that has kind of solidified that to where the next big job opening isn't always tied to his name.
Okay. Dane Bradshaw on the Out of Bounds show. I want to go back to Mississippi State, and then hopefully we have enough time to hit Bama. Cam Matthews, a player like Cam Matthews, Dane Bradshaw. He's not, in that top tier. He's not the Alabama, Kentucky guys, Tennessee guys, but he's 6'7", 225, and he's what you want in college basketball today because he can do so many things. What does he bring to the table for Chris Jans?
Yeah, look, he's just a tough dude. Every time I've had a Mississippi State game, I go to the opposing team shoot-arounds. The scouting report, and you can hear the respect the opposing coaches have for this guy. They're like, hey, big physical guard. He does a lot of little things for them. This is a tough cover. All those things that coaches truly appreciate. And what really stood out to me was late in that game, on the road in Bud Walton Arena, the crowd's starting to get into it. You're the hardest part of an upset is the close, and that's where people start. All of a sudden the pressure becomes on the underdog. And as Arkansas started to press, it was Cam Matthews that was not afraid to come to the ball. It was Cam Matthews, who is not necessarily a great free throw shooter, was not scared to get to the line. And he either got to the line and converted, or he put his head down, went to the rim, trying to get the foul because he wasn't scared to go to the free throw line, and that resulted in a big offensive rebound putback that he had in that game. So I just thought that mentality, because he's not a guy you're going to call a bunch of plays for, or, hey, we're getting down to crunch time, let's get it to Cam Matthews. That's not really what you say, but he's just a ball player that's not scared of the moment and willing to just go make plays.
Is Bama the best team in the country, in your opinion?
It's hard for me to get that Oklahoma game out of my memory where they got smacked. in that Big 12 challenge. But yes, I think so. I think they're the amount of weapons that they have. You look at Purdue, even though they lost, Zach Edey is just somebody that nobody has anything like. But when you talk about guard play and perimeter play, that's always just seems to dominate the NCAA tournament. Alabama has that. And so, it's going to be a crazy March. It really is. So even if Alabama is the best team in the country, it's by such a little margin that it's hard to even say they're a favorite to win it all or a favorite to get to the Final Four. It's just really congested at the top there, and that doesn't mean that to me. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's no great teams. I think there's just a lot of great teams, just none that have been able to separate themselves as just totally dominant. But in the SEC, I mean, what Alabama has done. I mean, Gary Parrish of CBS Sports, he touched on it. Like Karl Anthony Towns in Kentucky when they were going on that undefeated run years ago, Alabama is dominating the SEC by a larger margin, average scoring margin than even that Kentucky team. And so a great one coming up here with Alabama going on the road at Tennessee on Wednesday. So, and honestly, I thought Tennessee, I didn't think Tennessee was the better team, but I thought Tennessee would win the SEC regular season title because they got to host Alabama, and I like the way Tennessee's schedule was favorable, but that's obviously gone by the wayside. And Alabama, to their credit, made Oates' schedule so hard in the non-conference that when they go to Auburn and Neville Arena, they're prepared for that moment as much as you can be.
What? I'm surprised at how well Rick Barnes has done at your alma mater. I just thought he always came up short at Texas, and boy, was I wrong. He's done a good job up there in Knoxville.
He has. I think a lot of fans, myself included, when he got the job, like beggars couldn't be choosers because we were kind of in a little bit of an embarrassing place with so much coaching turnover, and then rumors of why coaches were leaving and administration, athletic director turnover. And so when we got Rick Barnes, it's like, you know what, that is a steady, stable individual that immediately restores credibility to the Tennessee program, which is exactly what he did. But you also wondered, hey, is this a retirement gig for him? Like, how much, is his prime behind him? But this dude loves ball. And he's just an absolute film and gym rat and film junkie. And he's done phenomenal. And so the only box left to check really is a deep run in March. And that's, fair or unfair, that's where these coaches' success is ultimately judged by. And so it's disappointing to see them with a couple of these losses, heartbreakers, 2 consecutive walk-off 3-point buzzer beaters by opponents, Vanderbilt and then Missouri. You'd like Tennessee to hang on to that 2 seed in the NCAA tournament because now it's not a cakewalk to the Sweet 16, but it sure is more manageable. If you start slipping to that 4 spot, those 4-13 games, 5-12 are just that's waiting to happen.
No doubt. Who do you have this week, Dane?
I'm actually off this week, so first time in a while. So I'm going to be a fan and watch the ball, and I actually might drive up to Knoxville and catch that Alabama game.
Good for you. All right. Well, look, great job. We appreciate your time today. We may hit you up on the way to March Madness, and we appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Good luck to the Bulldogs.
Dane Bradshaw, SEC Network, ESPN, former Tennessee Volunteer player, point guard and forward, joining us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. That was great, getting a little another angle on Jans and the Mississippi State Bulldogs. I love the way Cam Matthews plays, Blake. Just super athletic, jumps out of the gym. That dunk on Saturday night was ferocious. But he can do a little bit of everything, both on the defensive end and the offensive end. And he's kind of their Swiss Army knife, I think, in that he can wear several hats in the course of like 3 or 4 possessions. And credit to him. So he does what Chris Jans wants him to do.
Yeah, we've
never
just
play his blank off, and on both ends of the floor, especially the defensive end. Go ahead.
We've never questioned the athleticism on this roster, but we question the scoring. Once you start scoring, then that athleticism becomes less of a, oh, that's all they have, and more of a, oh, wow, that really adds to their game, right? If you can't score, you can't score. But now that they're scoring, all of a sudden you go, wow, they're really athletic and they can play great defense and do these little things, and maybe that'll win.
Sean Jones Jr. is also an interesting piece of this puzzle that Jans is trying to get more minutes. Freshman out of Houston, Texas, I think. And he's really athletic, long, can jump, can do some things. And he looks to be getting more confidence. So that's something else. That's another guy to keep an eye on. And I'm sure Jans and the coaches are doing this, but DJ Jeffries can't be passive on the offensive end. He's got to shoot the ball. When you got the look, you got to shoot. I thought maybe that game before,
he did
two games ago, when he was 5 of 6 from 3-point land, I thought, man, that could be what he needs to get the engine going and running at optimal level. And then I thought he passed several shots Saturday night, but
if he's giving
it didn't matter.
And if he's giving you a good game 2 out of 3 at this point, you'll take that all
True.
day. I mean, you're never going to be every night anyway, so you're getting more out of in this last 5 games from DJ Jeffries than you got the first 20, it feels like.
Fair enough.
And that's all you can ask for. Do you think, given what you heard from Dane and what we've seen, you feel like if Chris Jans and the Bulldogs can find their way into the postseason play, they could upset somebody?
Yeah.
They feel like a team that, boy,
you know why?
It's mimicking Ole Miss last year in baseball, getting hot at the right time.
Well, hot at the right time, but Jans can really ugly up a game.
Yeah.
And when you're in the tournament and teams get tight, shooters get tight anyway.
New gyms, weird backdrops. Yeah.
So Jans could really muck something up.
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden, a team that we were kind of like, what in the world is this on January 15th? Well, we're getting way ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
But they could win. There are teams all the time that don't have to be great that win NCAA tournament games.
Absolutely.
And there are teams that are loaded that lose NCAA tournament games.
I think about Duke and Zion Williamson.
Because it's just 2 hours in hoops.
Yep.
And it's a few 3-pointers that get hit on you or don't go your way. And then all of a sudden you're bounced or you're advancing going, what in the world? But we see that all the time.
Yeah.
I know last year was the Blue Blood Final Four, but it's not like that every year. So, and it lined up. So
it'll be interesting to see what they can do. Wednesday will be, like we said, I think Wednesday's the biggest game since the Stands era.
Yeah, I agree.
I
agree. I don't remember when Rick's last year was, but I agree with you. And I think it was 11. And then we had the Rick Ray thing, and then the Ben Hallen, the Rick Ray experiment. Ben Hallen was successful, just not quite as successful as people wanted him to be. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Cypress Depot in Ridgeland. They were back at my house last week. Those guys do a great job. Obviously, the leading supplier of hardwoods in Cypress, but so much more. And that's cypressdepot.com, but Cypress Depot in Ridgeland. And their office showcase room is really, really cool, too. And check out everything that they're doing, both residential and commercial. Kenny Hall and the team at Cypress Depot in Ridgeland. Show is also brought to you by the Bacon Egg Sandwich at Fleetway Market in Gluckstadt and their Market Cafe. Blake has never, ever gotten me a bacon egg sandwich. Now, I've had several things from Fleetway Market, but I will have a bacon egg sandwich from Fleetway Market in Gluckstadt, and it will be soon. Hour number 3 coming up.